Hi, welcome to lesson 2 in this, my series of music theory lessons for ukulele players. So, in the first lesson, we talked about how there are only 12 notes. On this ukulele, the lowest sounding note is C on the open third string. Next, at the first fret, there's C sharp, then there's D, D sharp, E, that's the open second string, then there's F, F sharp, G, G sharp, now the open first string is A, and then A sharp, until we play the 12th note, B. Then we get a higher sounding C, and the whole sequence repeats as you get higher. What about the 4th string? When played open, the note is G, but this is exactly the same note as the G on the 2nd string at the 3rd fret. So the 4th string doesn't actually give us any notes that are not also available elsewhere. Some ukulele players tune their 4th string an octave lower. It's still G, but it's a lower version of G, and this is called low G tuning. Doing that greatly extends the range of notes that can be played on the ukulele, which is very useful for playing melodies and soloing. In the first lesson, we also talked about scales, that is, sequences of notes from which our melodies come, especially the major scale. Well, a major scale can start on any of our 12 notes, and that gives us 12 keys in which any piece of music can be played. Let's take this simple tune. I'm playing it here in the key of C major because all of the notes come from the C major scale. But this tune can be played in any key. Say that we want to play it in C sharp major. We simply move everything up by one semitone. That's very easy to do on the ukulele because to move up a semitone, all you have to do is move up by one fret. By moving up the neck another semitone, now the tune is in the key of D major. So any piece of music can be moved to a different key simply by moving all of the notes by the same number of semitones, or frets. Musicians call this transposing the music. Of course, tunes on their own aren't much good without chords to back them up. Chords actually come from scales. For example, the C major chord comes from the C major scale. We take the 1st, 3rd, and 5th notes of the scale, and that gives us the notes C, E, and G. These are the notes that result when we strum this chord shape, the C major chord. All of the strings are playing either a C, an E, or a G. So it seems that when we play notes from a scale by skipping notes, this results in a group of notes that sound good together, and that's what we call a chord. When we play notes 1, 3, and 5, we skip the notes in between, notes 2 and 4. What if we apply this logic to the other notes of the major scale? So let's go back to the C major scale. If we take the 2nd note, which is D, there it is. Let's skip the 3rd note, E, and play the 4th note, F. Then we skip G and play A. That gives us D, F, and A. This is a chord, D minor, which we refer to as chord 2 in the key of C major. So we've established a pattern here. Play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note. So far we did this on the 1st and 2nd notes of the C major scale, and that gave us the chords C major, and D minor. So what happens if we apply this to note 3, E? Play a note, that's E. Skip a note, play a note, that's G. Skip another note and play B. So that's the E minor triad consisting of the notes E, G and B. And that's the E minor chord. So E minor is chord 3 in our family of chords that come from the C major scale. So let's move on to chord 4. That gives us the triad F, A and C, in other words our old friend the F major chord. Chord 5 contains the notes G, B and D, and that's the G major chord. Chord 6 in the key of C major is the notes A, C and E, and that's the chord A minor. Next is the very unusual chord 7. The triad of notes is B, D and F, and this gives us a rare chord that you hardly ever find in songs called B diminished. Don't confuse this with B diminished 7th. That's a much nicer sounding chord which you do find a lot in songs. Some people call B diminished B half diminished to prevent confusing it with B diminished 7th. So now we have a family of chords that all belong to the key of C major because all the notes in the chords come from the C major scale. We got there by building triads, 3-note chords, using notes from the scale 3 at a time, skipping the notes in between. We can refer to these chords either by their names or by numbers. Chord numbers are written down using Roman numerals from 1 to 7. The major chords use uppercase Roman numerals, while the other types of chords like minor and diminished and so forth use lowercase. So here are the 7 chords: C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor and B diminished. Why stop at 3 notes? Can we use 4 notes? After all, we have 4 strings on the ukulele, we may as well use them all for different notes. Let's try this with the first chord, C major. This comes from the triad of notes C, E and G, notes 1, 3 and 5 from the scale. Let's add a note. We'll skip note 6 and add note 7, which happens to be the note B. So now our chord contains the notes C, E, G and B and sounds like this. We call this chord C major 7th. It sounds like a more sophisticated, dare we say jazzier, version of C. So let's add a 4th note onto our other chords in the key of C. Chord 2 is D minor. A 4th note on the top of the D, F, A triad would be C. There's a C, and that gives us this chord, D minor 7th. Chord 3 is E minor, and if we add a 4th note D to the E, G, B triad, that's E minor 7th. Chord 4 is F major as a triad, but if we add the 4th note E to the F, A and C, then it becomes F major 7th. So far, our 2 major chords have become major 7ths when we add the 4th note, but chord 5 is an exception. The G triad is G, B and D, so the 4th note is F, and when we play those notes together we get this chord, G 7th. Not G major 7th, That contains F sharp, which doesn't belong to the key of C. So now we know where seventh chords come from. Actually, the proper old-fashioned musical name for these chords is dominant seventh, because dominant describes the fifth note or chord in the key. Whenever you see a dominant seventh chord in a piece of music, it's usually chord 5 in whatever key the music is in, although there are exceptions. Chord 6 is A minor. So if we add a fourth note to the A-C-E triad, that's a G, and the new chord is A minor seventh, which has got to be the easiest chord to play on the ukulele because you don't have to hold down any of the strings. A minor seventh. And now we come to chord 7, which as a triad of B, D and F gives us the pretty useless B diminished or half diminished chord that you hardly ever see in music. But if you add the extra note, which is A, then we get this wonderfully useful chord, B minor seventh flat fifth. That chord is used in all kinds of songs, like Summertime. Summertime, and the living is easy. That makes 14 chords in our family of chords in the key of C major. Any melody or tune that uses only notes from the C major scale can be harmonised with these chords. Any note of the scale has a choice of chords that will harmonise with it. For example, the note D can be found in all of these chords: D minor, D minor seventh, E minor seventh, G, G seventh, B diminished, and B minor seventh flat fifth. Making wise choices for which chords to accompany notes is an essential part of the songwriter or composer's skills. In the previous video lesson we talked about how the A natural minor scale is the relative minor of the C major scale because it contains exactly the same notes. For this reason, all of the chords we've built into this family work equally well in the key of A minor. Yes, there are minor keys as well as major keys, 12 of them in fact. This method of building a family of chords around a major scale is called diatonic harmony. What we've done here with the C major scale applies equally to all 11 other major scales. If we apply the same principles to the key of D major, we get a family of chords which include chord 1, D, chord 4, G, and chord 5, A. Now, let's take a simple song using the chords 1, 4 and 5 in the key of C. How about Twist and Shout, which was first a hit for the Isley Brothers and later on famously for the Beatles. So in the key of C, the chords are C, F and G, which are chords 1, 4 and 5. Shake it up, baby, now. Twist and shout, twist and shout. To transpose this song from the key of C major to the key of D major, all we have to do is substitute the chords from the key of D that have the same numbers as the chords in C. So chord 1 is D, chord 4 is G, and chord 5 is A. So here we go. Well, shake it up, baby, now. Twist and shout, twist and shout. Transposing the chords of a song helps you find a key that suits your singing voice better. So it's a really useful skill to have. To follow up on this lesson, pick a new key. I suggest G to start with, and build a family of chords that comes from the G major scale. Don't forget to download and read the PDF document that goes with this lesson. Have fun, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.